I'm by myself.
Bullshit. She's lying. Cut the shit, lady. What the
Christa,
fuck?
run!
Hey!
Well, hello everybody, my name is Brekdon and welcome to a new video on Telltale's The Walking Dead. And today we are going to discuss what I think would happen if Clementine and Christa had not split up at the river at the start of Season 2, Episode 1. Just remember, if you do go on to enjoy today's video, make sure you smash the like and subscribe button, as it helps support the channel and lets me know that you will want to see more content on Telltale's The Walking Dead. But without further ado, we will get straight into this video. So to set this scenario up, we need to establish how Christa and Clementine can stay together. And I believe the most realistic version here would be Christa waiting slightly longer to go and get more wood. This would then allow Clementine and Christa to hear the scavengers coming and would give them plenty of time to escape. With Clementine and Christa not getting split up, this means that Clementine never falls into the river. This means that she's never bitten by Sam and never meets the cabin crew, as she's never rescued by Luke and Pete. However, I believe that Clementine and Christa would both keep heading north to Wellington, as that was their end goal, and they would eventually cross the bridge and meet Matthew, who would in turn take them up to the lodge, and they'd meet Kenny again. Now it's important to note that Clementine and Christa would beat the cabin crew up there, as we saw the scavengers had managed to make their way to the stream, which is roughly nearby the cabin, before they had left to go to the ski lodge. So I think this is enough to justify Clementine and Christa beating the cabin crew up to the lodge. On the topic of the cabin crew, they would have an ordinary night, as there's not Clementine in their shed or breaking into their house. But this would still mean in the morning Pete and Nick would go down to the stream and would still see the bodies, but instead of Pete going all the way across and getting bit by that walker, he'd check the middle section of the stream first, where Clementine was, see the person. They would establish that this is not a good place to be, and they would go back and tell the cabin crew, who would agree to pack up their things and leave, as it seems like the sort of thing Carver would do. And I gather this idea because Pete did already have his suspicions during episode 1, so I think they would all pack up their stuff and move, which should then lead to them running into Matthew, but he wouldn't get shot because Nick hasn't gone batshit insane yet. Pete's still alive, so he wouldn't have. So they would go up, Matthew would vouch for them instead of Clementine, and they would get let in, and the rest of the episode would play out mostly the same. Now, one thing I did forget to mention here is that Nick survives either way this time, as Matthew's not dead, Walter doesn't have a reason to not save him, and obviously Walter's a very kind individual, so would in fact shoot the walker and help Nick, which then keeps him alive. I believe that episode 3, which is them inside House, would play out mostly the same until the end, as Clementine spends most of the episode away from the group anyway. However, in the herd, I believe Carlos would still get shot, causing Sarah to run off, which would then mean that Luke, Nick and Pete would all go after Sarah into the trailer park. And after Sarita gets bit, Matthew, who would still be alive at this point, would kill the walker and help Sarita out, as he has no experience with cutting people's arms off. And Christa would keep walking alone in the herd, remaining calm, as she does seem cold to Clementine in episode 1 and would seem cold to the rest of the group and care mostly about herself. After Jane, Clementine and Rebecca arrive at Parker's Run, they see Christa trying to comfort Kenny, as she is probably the closest person to him that is present at the time. Kenny would be hostile towards Matthew and Clementine, as together they, in Kenny's eyes, would have caused Sarita to be dead, as they were both present and didn't do anything to stop her getting bit. But after this, Jane and Clementine would still go to find Sarah, but don't see Nick's body, as Pete, being the very big brain person he is, uses some common sense and stops Nick going out, as he was shot at the end of episode 3. I mean, why would Nick go looking anyway if he got shot? It'd bring the walkers, and it does just a complete lack of common sense. But Clementine is still left with the choice to bring Sarah along or leave her. But with there being more people there, they're able to fight off the walkers a bit longer to give the player, i.e. Clementine, more time to convince Sarah to come. And it also allows the extra 2 people in total who are there time to get out. Now, so far Christa has had a fairly minor role, as I don't believe her being there would have had too much of an impact so far. But at the end of episode 4, when Rebecca's giving birth, Kenny and Christa would both be doing the delivery, as they both have experience of that. I still believe the deck would fall the same despite there being more characters, and Sarah would still have the same outcome, as she wasn't as attentive as the other characters were. And when the Russians attack, Clementine still has the same choice to shoot Rebecca and the Russians still shoot back, but I'm going to make some further improvements to this fight. Because they were aiming guns at each other at the end of episode 4, I believe that there would be more casualties, and for this I've decided that Matthew, he is experienced a bit less than the rest in these gunfights. So I also think that Pete would be injured during this fight, but not seriously. Christa would run for the baby, eliminating that decision, and would protect it behind cover. Kenny would still be pinned down, and Pete would keep Luke from running to Clementine's wall, as Pete is very big brain, has common sense, and would stop Luke running as it would expose him to getting shot. And Jane would still come back, and the Russians would still be dead. Nothing would change that, even if there was Christa there. But after Rebecca's death, I think that Christa would take on a more motherhood role for AJ, as she lost her child, AJ lost her mother. It's a perfect match. And Kenny would still continue to torment Arvo. Christa wouldn't really care because she's only bothered about the child. When they get to the river, the ice under Pete cracks instead of Luke. And then this, obviously, Nick being dumb, would still go and try and help Pete. This would crack the ice, Pete would die, but Luke would help Nick no matter what. That's not going to change. And you'll see why having Nick still alive would be important later on. The truck would still work, and Arvo, Mike and Bonnie would in fact try to steal it. But this time, after Arvo shoots Clementine, I think that Nick and Luke would both chase them while Kenny is dealing with the rest of them. And Clementine would wake up in the truck, in the snow, to see Christa, AJ, Kenny, Jane and Luke. It's very important to notice that there's no Nick here, because I believe that Arvo would have also shot him as Nick tries to be the hero. And it's very important that Christa is here for this part, because Jane would never hide AJ, but would try to get Kenny to snap another way, and would still lead to a fight between them. Luke would try and be objective and try and break it up despite his attachments to Jane, as we found out in episode 4. But would eventually get pushed back, taken out the fight, but not killed, because I don't think Kenny would go that far. And Christa would bring the baby, and this would like snap Kenny back to normal. And obviously Jane was losing the fight in the original, so I've no reason to believe she wouldn't begin to lose the fight in this. So she would be like, I'm out, we're not having that, I don't particularly fancy dying for this. So seeing this, Jane would admit defeat. She doesn't want to die just to go back to Howe's. So they would go up to Wellington, they would get denied, and then Jane would pipe up and say they go back down to Howe's. Kenny and Christa, both feeling defeated, would be like, fine, yeah, let's do it, and they would go back down to Howe's. And in this example, the family would still show up, ask for food. Whether you let them in or not, they wouldn't be able to steal, as there is an extra 3 people there to defend them. So they would either join and be very nice people and they'd set up a nice community, or they'd try and steal and die, and we would move on with our lives. Well, thank you for watching, everybody. If you have enjoyed watching, be sure to leave a like, subscribe and share the video, as it does help out the channel a lot. And if you have any ideas on how things may have been different in this What If, make sure you leave them down in the comments below, as I'm always interested in hearing what you guys have to say. And if you have any ideas for What Ifs or any ideas for theories, make sure you leave those in the comments below as well, as I'm always needing new ideas, because I'm just completely empty for ideas. But until next time, my name is Brekdon, and I'm out. Super slap. Wah, pow.